You're turned away at the tunnel,
Mm-hmm.
and you get on your bike, and you're going on the sidewalk, and you go over the bridge with the bike
Yeah.
into Lower Manhattan.
Yeah. And there was nobody else on the bridge going in. Everybody was running in the walkway, and actually on the road out of the city was full of people. The roadway out of the city was also full of people on the walkway.
Yeah.
But on the side going in, there was nobody on that side, so I was probably I was motoring.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
so Tim, the picture on the screen now is of you, and tell me, where is this picture taken?
It's right behind the Millennium Hotel. And Alan was standing off to the right, and when I saw him taking pictures, I'm a photographer. I had my own darkroom, but at that moment, there was no photographer in me. I just kind of got upset that he was taking pictures, and I got so upset I turned my head so he wouldn't get my picture. I was kind of like sticking it to him, you know. We're good friends now, but at the time, I was just incensed that he wasn't helping people, you know, and you know, how could you be taking pictures when there's thousands of people dying? You know, I thought we were going to lose 30, 40,000 people that morning, you know. So I made the right-hand turn. If you look at that picture real close, you can see the sunlight coming from John Street. On the other side of Broadway, it's actually Day Street, right between the Millennium Hotel and the Century 21 building. That's where I made the right-hand turn. And when I got down to church, the debris field now was so heavy and so thick that I actually was looking to ditch the bike and get on foot, but sitting on my left-hand side, right on the curb cutout, was an engine from one of the planes, and it was standing upright on its cone.
Huh.
It was just so surreal and weird and foreign. It just kind of like hit me. What you know, it was really bad. And there was nobody there to tell me I couldn't do it, so I actually went up onto the sidewalk and drove my motorcycle into the lobby of the Millennium Hotel. I wanted to protect my bike. So I did that, and as I got off the bike and was exiting the building, I turned to look at my bike again, because I never thought I'd see it again. And as I was staring at it, I saw this gentleman in blue khakis running south to north through the lobby, and he went right between my bike and the front desk. And as he was looking at the bike, as he got right up to it, he saw me exiting the building and looking at the bike. So he stopped dead in his tracks, and I actually read his lips, and he said, "Damn," as he did one of these, "Damn," and he stopped, ran over to the front windows in the lobby and ripped down one of those 20-foot curtains and threw it over my bike, and then ran north out the side entrance. And I thought, wow, dude must be a biker.
Yeah.
So as I exited the building, I made a left, heading to the South Tower. I may be crazy, I'm not stupid. I wasn't trying to get into the North Tower. I already saw the South Tower fall. So I was trying to get to the South Tower to do whatever I could do. I got maybe a half a block. I got right in front of the Century 21 building when I heard the first boom. And then as I heard the second boom, the earth started shaking.
So the boom was what?
The building was coming down on top of me.
Got it.
Because it picked up speed. After the second boom, I noticed the time between the booms was shorter and shorter.
Almost like
boom,
vertical
boom,
dominoes.
Boom.
Yeah.
It was almost like 100 freight trains on my ass. So I didn't even turn to look. I kind of knew what was happening, so I was all assholes and elbows, and I didn't get far. I got about 8 or 10 steps when I got clobbered the first time. And I got hit really hard. I didn't lose consciousness. I had my gear on, my helmet on. But I went to the ground, and I went right to the fetal position, and I was trying to pull myself into my helmet. I was trying to make myself as small as possible because I was being buried. But after laying there for, I don't know how long, 2 or 3 seconds, it took 11 seconds for the building to come down. Almost 11 seconds. Yeah.
How many stories?
110.
11 seconds.
11 seconds. So
there's debris everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
You can't see.
No.
Obviously, you have your helmet on, you have your jacket on, and you feel yourself. You're getting buried. This is coming down so fast. It's taking you. It's the undertow, just like a surfer gets taken by a wave. Yeah. It's coming from behind you. Yeah. You know it.
At first, like I said, I was just in the fetal position trying to pull myself into my helmet, and as a truckie, they you're supposed to be in a bad situation all the time. So I was taught to constantly trying to improve your situation. So even though I laid there for that second or two or three, I started to think, that I might not be able to improve my situation. I thought I was done. You know, I got to that quiet, calm, everything slowed down, and it's over, but no big deal. Very hard to explain, but that's where I was. And just as I got to that and got that, I remember feeling that relaxed, everything's going to be okay. And then I got mad at myself, and I remember I said to myself, you selfish bastard, your wife has no husband, your kids have no dad. And that's when I tried to get up and run. And I never got back to my feet. I tried a couple of times, I remember, and the last time I knew I wasn't going to be getting to my feet. I just kept getting, hammered back down. So the last time I just stayed on my hands and knees and I crawled for my life. And I knew the area pretty well. So I headed towards the Brooks Brothers, One Liberty Plaza. That the first 2 floors there is the Brooks Brothers clothing store. And I knew that there was, a really big overhang before you went into the store. And I thought that if I could get under that I would be protected. So as I couldn't feel the steps, but I knew the steps were there. So as I was climbing over the debris of the South Tower is when the 110th story hit the pavement of the North Tower, and that final blast that came out actually bounced me off the front of the building. It propelled me up off the steps and bounced me off the doors, and I put my back against those granite pillars there. I can only imagine the steel on the inside of them. And I threw my back against the pillar and sunk down onto my hocks and buried my face into my turnout gear, because I was really starting to have a hard time breathing. It was like being stuck inside a cement bag. The clumps of cement was starting to form into like clumps. It was wicking the moisture out of my eyes and my nose and my throat, and I was really starting to have a hard time. I was choking, and so as soon as I heard the debris stop falling, I dove into the Brooks Brothers, and I did a quick preliminary search on the first floor, and then I hit the escalator. I went upstairs and I did a quick preliminary search on the second floor. And when I came down, I was looking for something to cover my face with. So I grabbed a pack of handkerchiefs off a shelf, and I was making a thing to put around my face when I heard. So I knew there was a fireman in there somewhere, and I needed some fresh air.
And what you heard was the oxygen, the breathing apparatus.
Scott bomb, yeah. So I made towards the voice, and it was a monster of a man named Billy Quick. And he shared his bottle with me. So after a couple of breaths, I told him, "Come on, Billy, we'll go out through the lobby, and we'll come down on Liberty," because the debris field now was just, pretty bad on Church outside the front door of Brooks Brothers. So he was banged up pretty good. He's Duff. I survived the first and the second, and I need to take a blow. I'm banged up a little bit. I said, "All right, Billy, you hang here, and I'll come back and check on you. I'm going to go out." And so I went out into the lobby to go out onto Liberty, and I saw 2 firemen coming towards me around an elevator bank. 2 black kids, one guy carrying the other guy. One guy had a compound fracture of his right leg, and I don't know what else was wrong with him. That's all I could see. And so I scooped up the other side, his right-hand side. And when we got onto the sidewalk, he was screaming and crying. He was in a lot of pain. To give him a break. So we put him down, and he started, "Get me a bus, get me a bus." And I was like, "Dude, I just came in, and there, everything's crushed, burning. There's nothing. We're going to have to carry you to Beekman," which is probably 6-8 blocks away. Mm-hmm. And what was funny was, as I was telling him this, I could see he wasn't happy with what I was telling him, because he was hurting. But as I was telling him, that same improving situation was going on in my brain. So I wasn't happy telling him that. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a 4-wheel drive white Toyota pickup truck, perpendicular in the middle of Liberty. Like the guy must have seen the plane hit the trade center, hit the brakes, went sideways, and bailed. So I figured if he did that, he probably left the keys in it. And so I went over the truck, the keys were in it. He was a commercial plumber, so he had all pipe threading equipment and stuff in the back of his truck. So I threw it all out onto Liberty and put this kid into the truck. And as I went to get in the truck, I saw 3 more firemen coming up out of the cloud up Liberty. and it was two guys that had dug a guy out that was buried, and he was in shock. So put him into the back of the truck, and I took them down to Beekman. When I got to Beekman, to the emergency room, there were tons of nurses and doctors and gurneys, and nobody was doing a damn thing. Not because they didn't want to, because there was nobody. So when I pulled up, they all bum rushed my truck and took these two guys, put them on gurneys, and took them in the emergency room. Well, one of the surgeons came over, or doctors, came over to the driver's side and leaned down and into me, and he was a little upset that I only brought two people. And he said some sort of comment like, "You only brought two people," and right away in my brain I was thinking, "You think I left people there, you idiot?" Like, but I understood where it was coming from. Like, they were all frustrated like we were. They wanted to help, but there was nobody to help. So I wound up going back to the pit and looking for somebody else to take to the hospital. And I never found anybody else alive or injured. I wound up seizing the engine in the truck, looking for, and all that soot clogged up the radiator, and I wound up seizing the engine of the truck. And so I went on a search for my company, and about a half hour later, I remember right before I hooked up with them, the jets flew overhead. And I remember thinking, try it now, you sons of bitches.
Yeah.
Like, here's John Wayne and the boys.
Yeah.
That made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. And so I just went and hooked up with my company, and all day we did what we did. And then I remember it was probably around midnight. We were on the west side and came across 105's rig. And I remember thinking, if the building was coming down, I would have dove under the rig, And Rescue 2, I think it was Rescue 2. It was they had some tools and stuff, and they were trying to get underneath the rig, but nobody was working underneath the bucket, So I started digging. We still had nothing. I just had my gloved hands, and I remember we're digging underneath the bucket, trying to get down in there. And after 10 or 15 minutes, I remember somebody tapping me on the back, to let them in, and take a blow. That means take a rest and let me in. And I was like, I'm good, and I stayed there, and another, I'm good, and I was just, going at it. And I remember Billy Stores, Duff, you got to take a blow. And I was like, I'm good, Billy. And just a couple of minutes later, as I was saying, I'm good. My arms and hands stopped working. I couldn't move them anymore, So, sorry. So I had to take a blow. And it was around 1 o'clock. One of the chiefs came by and peeled off our company. They wanted us to go home so that we could come back fresh in the morning. They were trying to get guys to leave so that they could have fresh bodies for the morning. So I got on my bike and I went home. And when I got home, the adrenaline rush had left me, and I was having problems seeing. I went blind a little bit, and I couldn't see. But I only lived down the block from the hospital, so I took myself to the emergency room, and they cleaned out my eyes, and went home and really didn't sleep. Got on the bike and went back. Was there for 0700, and I wound up pairing up with Mikey Vitale, who retired out of my firehouse. And I don't know why or how, but me and Mikey were at the pit in front of the Deutsche Bank, and I went down into the pit to search, and Mikey had my back, and we still had no masks or ropes or tools. And I was down in that hole thinking I'm going to go tunnel rat, but when I got down in the hole, I didn't see any fire. It was a light smoky haze condition, but whatever it was shut me down. shut my lungs down, and I started to suffocate down in the hole. So I tried to yell for help, and I couldn't get those 4 letters out, so I did the universal, and Mikey grabbed a couple of guys, and they pulled me up out of there, and they took me into the triage in 10 house, and they dragged me in there and laid me on a gurney, and I was starting to lose consciousness because I just wasn't getting any air. And then they stuck a needle in my arm, and just a couple of seconds later, my lungs opened up, and I was good after that. So they wanted me to go home, but I didn't really want to go home. So I just stayed. Late in the afternoon, I did go home because I was having some trouble breathing. So, went home and then went back on the 13th, and, I was there and on and off until I think it was February. The firehouse, it took them a while to figure out how to man the pit. So after a while, they were taking guys on 30-day details in groups. So a lot of guys didn't want to go, understandable, but I volunteered, and Tommy Gardner from, he's, I believe, still the captain of 111 truck, a veteran, and I had worked with him. He covered a spot in my firehouse, and I wound up working with him, and he's a half a nut, but a good half a nut, and I liked working with him. He was a gung-ho guy. So he called me up at home and asked me if I would join him, and he was putting a group together to go dig for the month of February of veterans. So I jumped at the chance to work with him, and wound up working with some real legends on the job, Eric Weiner and B.A. and Matty Maw, and we were a little unorthodox in how we handled it. A lot of teams would dig for an hour and go take, 20-minute, half-hour break and all that. And Tommy Gardner wasn't having any of that. We were digging for, 3 or 4 hours, and we'd take a half-hour break and
get the job done.
Yeah. So we were the bloodhounds, because we came across. We actually, I just saw something on Facebook yesterday. That female cop that saved a bunch of people, Maura Smith. We actually were the ones that found her. Yeah, and they had to. It was pretty bad. By that time, it was in the end of February that we came across her. So it was pretty bad. But they identified her badge and her gun. And so then my month was up, and I was supposed to go back to the firehouse, and one of the guys that was supposed to take my spot for the next month was studying to be a lieutenant and didn't want to dig, so I told him to study, and I'll take his 30-day detail. So I did, and then after that, I was supposed to go back to the firehouse, and they grabbed me and asked me Tooley was in charge of the tools. He had a gator, and he was the tool guy. And he was going on vacation, and they needed a guy that knew the site and knew the tools, so they asked me if I would take his spot. So yeah, absolutely, I'll take his spot. And then after a week or two of doing that, one of the chiefs found out that I was going on 3 months in a row there, and got a little upset, and they sent me back to the firehouse. So I went back to the firehouse, and it wasn't long before I was taking the role of senior man on some of the tours, because we lost so many of our senior guys, and now our guys are being promoted to fill the spots and stuff. So I was taking young guys under my wing, and I knew I had a problem, and so I didn't go sick for almost 3 years, for 2.5 years, because I knew that if they got a hold of me down at headquarters, that they might kick me out. So
because you were getting sick?
Yeah, well, my lungs were really starting to be a problem, and I never had a problem at a fire. I used to carry an inhaler with me in case. I never had to use it, but there was that chance, you know. So I got hurt at a fire. I wound up, ceiling came down on me at a fire, and I wound up in the emergency room at Coney Island Hospital. And so after that, I had to go to headquarters to get back in the system, to get back to work, to the firehouse. I had a little burn on my neck. It was nothing. And the doctor said, you know, Duffy, 153, you haven't been here for a medical in almost 3 years. Where you been hiding? I was like, just day off. I got lucky, you know. So he sent me down the hall with my folder, and I came back about 3 hours later. And he opened it up, and he said, that's it, you're done. I was like, thanks, Doc. And I got up to leave. He goes, no, you're done. And with 8 months, I was off the job. They put me off the job. So I had nightmares they just stopped, actually, within the last year or so. I would wake up in cold sweats, and it's not what you think. It wasn't the gory stuff it was, and what helped, I think, to stop the nightmare was I found out I wasn't the only one that had the same frickin' nightmare.
Yeah.
I was standing on the apparatus floor with my boots in my hand, and the rig was leaving the firehouse without me. And I found out in counseling that I wasn't the only one, you know. I loved the job, and it was just, it was everything to me.